Look, I think that's been a fascinating little collection of people who can tell us separately that the existing, for want of a better word, I'll call it the subscription TV model will be fine driver of broadband uptake. That yes, we need video content, but it needs to be a different model. That actually news will drive broadband uptake, but in the reality we don't need to worry about that. It's actually games. I think that opens up a whole range of things which I could personally question you about, but I've already seen one hand from the audience, so I'm going to go to the audience first. And down here, question. Microphone, please.
Hello, Ian Yeoman, Victoria University. This is a question to the panel. You very much talked about what you want to happen, say probably in the next 5 years. My question is to you, what do you think is likely to happen in the next 5 years?
Good question. Who's going first?
So, look, I'll add one small thing I didn't mention was cloud-based gaming. So there's already 2 services live where no matter what device you've got, no matter how big or strong it is, you've got a thin client on the front end and there's a server which processes the game for you. 2 of those services are already live. One of them's got 10 million users, one's got 1.5 million. Very soon that would happen. Problems in New Zealand is actually what's necessary is the connection to the servers in the States or the UK, and latency would be the issue for us with those. But those, would sound like quite fantastic services already exist and about a year old in the UK and US.
Just, I had a slide up there showing what direction we were headed, multiple devices, looking at different models, the fact that I think linear television will start switching to more pool television or cloud, depending on how you define it.
Yeah, I think subscription video on demand will be quite big, and I think you'll see that expand out through different content producers and distributors.
And I think it will depend on the appropriate price points and people getting things they're not currently getting that they're prepared to pay for. And I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that the offerings, if we want uptake to be fast and we see our role in trying to facilitate that we do produce potentially some more local stuff as well as being able to buy in things internationally.
Well, I have a question there which leads from all that. We talked yesterday a bit about the idea that both the telco businesses and the media businesses have face disruptive business models as a consequence of what's happening. The subscription TV model has economics that's built around the fact that you need to pay for the connection out of the content, if you like. And so has historically around the world grown on this whole model of tiers. You buy packages of content, that's got the standard economics of bundling, that argue that's the efficient way of, the efficient meaning the way to recover as much revenue from customers as you can, way of doing that. Yet I think users are sitting there saying, well, we actually don't like that model, and when we go to the internet, well, we're not paying you for the infrastructure anymore, we're paying for the infrastructure, so we think we should be able to pay for the content in different models. So that's sort of like one end of it. And the second end of it, you've got the media model where the TV station, or sorry, the newspapers, we had some sessions yesterday about the walls that Mr. Murdoch has been trying to construct. And yet yesterday the gaming people told us that they've got round the problem of the walls because what they build is ladders or steps, which means you get to certain tiers, certain amounts of the content for certain levels. Now, I mean, we've got 4 vastly different sort of constructions about how you do this piece of charging for content. Do you think there's a lot of work to be done yet on people working out what the pricing models are, or do you think really the things that people have been used to doing as their way of charging for their content are going to endure? John?
No, I think you're right. I think there'll be lots of new business models on it. I mean, it just amazes you all the different businesses out there. You have the Netflix model, the Apple TV model, the Roku model, the Google TV model. They're all slightly different, and they all will impact the traditional pay television models. I think the UFB will give us the opportunities to offer separate packages. Right now, what probably constrains us the most, if you do a deal with CNN, to carry CNN, you've got to make it available to every subscriber. So I can't offer Soho by itself in over the satellite without having a package that includes CNN and a host of other basic channels. But I think, again, that will start to break down as we go farther.
Yeah, but given the fact that if it's the internet model, you don't need to offer the CNN because I can go get the CNN over the net. Does that change that model?
That's when it starts to break down. That's correct.
Anyone else want to comment on the sort of business models piece at this point?
I think from the newspaper point of view, there's been a few models put out through Murdoch in particular in the last little while. I think the freemium one seems to work better, where your core users consume a chunk of content and you maybe charge them for a bit past that. I think the thing you need to remember in New Zealand is, one, competition. If it's free, then it makes it damn hard to charge. And secondly, scale. So New York Times might be fine to do it if they get 2% of their audience, but if we did it, 2% of our audience is significantly less, so probably doesn't make a viable business model.
Scale is a very significant factor in that regard.
Indeed. And I think the other point we would also, probably all of us make, is the fact that we have had a market that's fragmented on all of us over the last 10 years in terms of the plethora of entertainment choice that people have, whether it be television or anything else by way of entertainment. So we've all had to get on the front foot in terms of working out how we can come up with business models that do support that increased competition. And you know, this is from where we sit, no different.
Okay, I'll go to you. Oh, sorry.
Oh, look, just quickly, in the games industry, there's just so many and bizarre business models out there. And you know, there's a local game developer who made, I don't know, $300,000 through a pay-what-you-want bundle. And you could just, some people paid them 10 cents for the game, some people paid them 5 cents. And so I think one of the lessons out of that is it's not just different models for different companies, but even your one company could offer 10 different price points and price different packages for exactly the same product. And the marginal cost between making those 10 different variations could be quite small. And you know, one of the lessons we've learned with online games in particular is the problem with subscriptions online is it limits the amount your most passionate customer can spend with you. It's not about the entry point to the subscription, it's the fact that you're limiting someone to spend $20 with you a month. When we're talking online, you know, so an online mobile game that we give away for free, the average revenue per paying customer could be $15. And if that's only 2 or 3% of our customers who are paying that, imagine what our top 1% are paying. You know, there are people who pay $50, $200, $300 a month on a game that we gave them for free. And put it this way, in the industry term, we call them whales, which is casino talk from the guys across the road. You know, so that's, you know, and there's just a whole bunch of different models out there besides that.
And being online, you don't have to give them the hotel room. Sorry, I've got a question down there, and then a question over there. So give the microphone to the lady in the white here as well.
One of the potential outcomes of the work of the study group is a decision to go ahead with a formal inquiry under the Telecommunications Act into content issues. And I'd just like to ask each one of the panellists what their reaction would be to such an inquiry. To what extent would they participate in that inquiry if it occurred?
Can I just get a point of clarification? I think yesterday Ross said content issues weren't in his remit, so...
Yeah, I think the most unlikely that you could have an investigation.
So let me pose it as a different kind of hypothetical, and I'll channel Amy Adams and say I've just had a change of heart, so I need judgment of my backflip, and say actually I'm going to hold an inquiry into content, and now we'll ask the question. The Minister's just announced an inquiry into content. What would your reaction be?
I think I've been pretty clear. Open access, total cooperation. What more could there be?
Okay. Look, the games industry is quite happy that we're very low regulated at the moment, and the regulators haven't paid attention to the games industry. There is currently zero government support for any New Zealand content in games, and yet, as you know, 40% of young people are passionate about games. There's a huge cultural and learning opportunity missing from not having New Zealand gaming content as well.
Look, I think what you're doing is seeing a shift from how the consumer wants it to who's the best lobbyist in Parliament, and so that would be my concern.
And before I worked for Minister Conroy, I did do some of that work. So for heart. No. Nigel.
Oh yeah, we'd happily support something if there was the basis for that. Yeah.
I mean, I don't really want to go down the pathway of the inquiry all that much. The bit I did want to touch on, though, was not the question of where the content's available, but it's available through one platform. I mean, from what was being said, the Sky content is actually incredibly widely available. Yes, you've got to pay for it. You've got to pay for it in tiers, but it's not like you can't actually get it because there's a technological inhibitor, maybe a financial one. But what I was intrigued by was this comment that there's a large amount of rights that have been acquired and not used. Yesterday, Gerd, in his opening address, talked about the concept of if you've got content, you must make it available. Now, the Sky content is available, but you were, Sussan, talking about other content that's acquired and not available. What kind of content's that?
I think that free-to-air players do output deals with Hollywood studios where you bid for rights to buy contracts and you buy a certain sort of volume from them over a certain term. And I guess it's fair to say there have been interesting bidding wars inside the New Zealand market between TVNZ, TV3 and Prime as we've all worked to secure rights to that content. Now, I would also contest that TVNZ not necessarily mandated to, I guess, present a decent commercial return to its shareholder has often been in a situation where they have been capable of paying more than what a market would necessarily dictate for that content. So owning it to, in effect, stop, say, TV3 having access to it has meant they have got it, but in the event that they don't use it, they have to do something with it. And what you see there is them acquiring stuff, I guess, to starve us of some oxygen and not playing it, and at a certain point in time you have the opportunity to be able to, I guess, write that off.
It's an interesting one because my experience is that that's what drives a lot of the downloading activity is in fact content for which rights have been purchased. They're not shown in markets, and people go around that because the global social network says this is great content. I want to see it.
Yeah, I just want to confirm, Sky and Prime, we flog every right we have. And, we've never written off any content, and more importantly, in the majority of my contract, there's a use it or lose it clause. So if we didn't put sports over the internet, I'd lose the right, and they could reissue it to somebody else, as an example.
Look, and my understanding is that for some TV shows that say that are purely on TVNZ on demand, not available on broadcast, there's actually been some really good viewership figures. Things like Reservoir Hill won a digital Emmy. Auckland Days, has had some good viewership figures as well, and that's purely shown online.
But it's shown online. Yep. Okay. The question was the lady in white.
Thank you. Lisbeth Kumer from Telstra Clear. I was interested, my question is for John Fellet. John, you were talking about the fact that you don't have exclusive access deals with rights holders, or certainly that was the message I took away. But my question to you is, if those rights holders can deal with distributors directly, turn the question around, and the question for you is, can those distributors deal directly with rights holders? And if they do, what are the ramifications where it concerns Sky?
Well, I'm happy to continue the negotiations with Telstra Clear. I'm not sure this is the proper venue. I mean, unless we invite them to my office tomorrow as well. Look, all these deals are arm's length transactions. A good example with the Telstra Clear, you have channels we don't carry. You've opted to carry these channels because you think that they add value, and you have that ability to do it under our contract.
Sorry, question up the back there. I wasn't sure if Elizabeth had a follow-up, but I'll...
John Corey, consultant. Can you elaborate
Sorry, John, you're out of now.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the set-top box issue? Are we ever going to see the end to multiple set-top boxes? I've got a stack of about 4 now.
Look, you're starting to see some of that. I'm sorry, was that my question? You're starting to see some of that already with the iPlayers and that sort of stuff. So this iSky, which we'll be able to get on the television set hopefully soon as smart sets start rolling out, will have its own boxless environment. And that changes the economics of the business for the better, because the boxes are kind of the bad end of the business. But until that happens and gets widespread, I still think you're going to see multiple boxes, because that's the way you really connect the antenna to the average television set that doesn't have the smart TV set inside of it.
Anyone else got a view on that, or happy? What have we got? We've got one over the back there. Journalist alert.
Hello, Sarah Putt, Computer World. Sussan, I'm really interested in your presentation. Are you saying that unless there's some kind of regulation bringing broadcasting and telco regulation together, the MediaWorks business model on UFB is very difficult, almost flawed?
Well, I think our capacity to create an appropriate business model from it comes from being able to access quality product in order to offer it to consumers. And we know that if we start right back at get-go, that's what this is all about, trying to provide for you what you want when you want to watch it. And part of that comes in terms of us being able to acquire it at the right price and also make it at the right price. So we take responsibility for the stuff that we can, but in the event we don't have a wholesale content market and it's already totally taken care of by everybody else and they've nibbed rights on it and we cannot get access to it, then our capacity to be able to deliver you a competitive alternative is limited. So I'm not trying to be dramatic, I'm just trying to say unintended consequences can often lead to things that are troublesome. And certainly from MediaWorks' perspective, I mean, we are not whiners. We love a free market economy, and very rarely would you have seen any of us up here sort of crying that something doesn't feel fundamentally equitable. But I guess as we cast forward, we have got our hand up saying there needs to be a bit of regulation around this, light regulation at that.
What does a wholesale rights market look like different from the existing market where distributors go to content providers?
I think that we would be able to entertain contracts differently from the way in which they are currently sort of assembled in this market. So that would require, participation from everybody in a different way.
Well, I mean, okay, but that comes back to sort of like another question, which is, all contracts are between two parties, and either one of those parties can make a change to the way contracts are structured. The original content providers could equally well be the ones who decide they'd like to see a change in the way contracts are structured. Is it possible to create an incentive for them? I mean, the one that always jumps out at me, and this came up at the conference the Commerce Commission ran about 3 years ago, which is that organisations like the New Zealand Rugby Union, I anticipate in the near future we'll start saying we don't need an intermediary to do all this. We'll start selling our rights directly to consumers. We will in fact become the broadcaster of our content, and even turn to the TV distributors and say, look, there's a channel here called our rugby content, and you can distribute it or not. Well, by the way, we sell the advertising on that channel, not you. I mean, is that not a viable alternative model? And isn't that up to, can't the rights holders do that?
They could, and look, all of those things are potential.
But again, I think probably only with the UFB rollout.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
okay.
I think this is the interesting question. I think the UFB, I mean, quite frankly, John, I think you're the person who should be most worried about the UFB rollout, because it puts more pressure on your business model than anyone else's. And the rights holders will stop selling to you because they don't need you anymore.
Yep. And look, we see that happening a little bit in the games industry, and those rights holders. So, like the NBA is a good example in the States. They've got a whole bunch of extra stats, and that's the value-added service that they will sell to a fan. And if I'm a fan of basketball, I trust them more to give me that brand experience of following those players and telling me all the the stats and deeper engagement than I do than an aggregator. Unless that aggregator is a really specialised sports brand, maybe ESPN could do just as good a job, but a large generic aggregator, distributor probably couldn't. And when you move into online business models like freemium, the way you make money is you build fans and you offer those pathways to deeper engagement with this thing that I really care passionately about. And so I think those rights holders are better at that, have the brand that's more appropriate, and they've got the greater vested interest in upselling you up a microtransaction pathway.
Can I just quickly ask, John, do you know of any major sporting code that directly sells its content? Because I'm struggling to see why the rugby union would sell its stuff directly online when you're taking care of all the issues for them and paying quite a bit to give that right.
Typically, where you see it is, let's take a Major League Baseball. There's 30 baseball teams in the league, and they each play 162 games. Now, the average channel in the local market, you may see all your local team's game, but if you live in Arizona and you're a fan of the New York Yankees, you may not see all the New York Yankee games. So they pay extra to get access to all those games. It works a little bit different in New Zealand because we typically carry every game. So we carry every game of the NRL and the rugby union. We don't carry every game of the basketball. We carry all the Breakers games, and we carry a smattering of other games that are being produced, but there's still some other games out there that in Australia they don't produce, and we can't afford to go over and cover it. So those are ones that they could sell directly to big fans of basketball.
We've got limited time, so I'm going to go first to this person over here, and then to Ernie. So this person over here.
Hi, Steve Ellis, Red Hat New Zealand. What's your position on giving the consumers the ability to manipulate the content? You know, as a consumer, I want to be able to time shift content. I want to be able to cache content because I might want to take the PVR down to the batch at the beach at the weekend. I don't necessarily want to watch things live. I want to be able to record the 6 a.m. business news and then put it on my phone and watch it on the bus going to work. I might want to download a game. I'm playing it on my phone, but I want to interact with the family, so I'll plug that into the big screen TV and play it through there. I don't want restrictions put on what I can do with the content that's available, and yet Sky restricts content because you can't pull content off your recorders, and you use encryption and use heavy DRM. Even Freeview puts systems in place to protect and restrict what you can do with the content. You know, what's your position as we go forward and content's being made available over UFB? You know, we're going to see that we have to go and buy yet another set-top box in order to get access to content because there's yet another form of DRM being put in place? Or we actually see standards, open protocols being used, multicast access onto video streams so that we can manipulate, use, cache, and handle the content in the manner that we expect to, rather than in a manner being dictated by the broadcaster?
Look, we're in 100% agreement with you. I mean, we're trying to go back and get rights, and you're starting to see some of that now. The iSky is basically the first step in that, allowing you at the batch, if you have an internet connection, to be able to...
And a Windows-based PC.
I'm sorry?
And a Windows-based PC.
I didn't hear you. And the Windows...
You've placed restrictions on the device that has access to iSky.
Only to the degree the restrictions are put on me. So a studio will not allow me... I mean, there is even restrictions in theory that we're fighting where the studios are coming in and saying, we only want the content on the MySky for a certain period of time because we're worried that it might hurt box sales of DVDs. And so these are the fights that we continue to have. And any restrictions we have, we don't have the ability to waive those for you. But we think the more people like you out there that maximize the use of that content, the better off we're going to be. And we think the better off studio is going to be, but it's just getting them across. I don't know what, Sussan?
Absolutely. We love the idea of lots of channels, and it's a case of really the price points attached to actually being able to deliver those. So again, coming right back to trying to provide content to people and have them almost end up in a platform agnostic way of ingesting it. So it is the end game. It's just a case of the steps needed from a business perspective to get there. I
mean, in the case of MediaWorks, it's very hard to cache your on-demand content.
Can I just cut you off there and just sort of indicate maybe the answer is that these people are the pointy end of a global distribution model, and some of the questions are in fact what the global distribution model and not what these people do. Ernie?
Ernie Newman, Real Consultant. I hear both poles of this argument, the Minister sort of wanting to avoid regulatory creep and on the other hand, the very strong argument being made for a viable wholesale market in content. Is there a role here for industry self-regulation? Because I'm conscious of the telecommunications experience where industry self-regulation, admittedly with a regulatory backstop, did actually make a lot of progress in getting these people to talk to each other and play nicely on the field. Could this happen in the content sector? Could you guys get together and sort out a viable business model that you could all live with, that would keep the government out of it and satisfy the legitimate interests of other providers?
Okay.
There is always hope.
John?
Look, we've been doing that for 11 years, and I think what up to this point, I mean, my opinion has always been once the deal has been signed, the negotiations stop. Sometimes some of my partners think it just starts from that point. So these are things that we'll continue to work on. And by the way, there's very little government intervention anywhere around the world on the subject. There's a little bit in England on some isolated cases, but that's, you know, these deals have a way of working out with two parties trying to maximize the value of their assets.
It's a very simple fact that to prove that someone has denied you access to something, you have to at least have demonstrated that you tried to get it.
Yeah, our position is that we don't support regulation, and self-regulation is fine, but we certainly don't support any government intervention.
Okay. Now, this session has now run a minute and a half over, so I'm going to have to close it. But I do want to give, because we've spoken a lot about video, I want to give Stephen one last chance to tell us all why we need to support the New Zealand games industry, because I actually think that it's a good story.
Oh, okay, thank you. I thought I did my subtle plug already, but
just do it again.
Look, high tech, high growth, digital, weightless export jobs. Simple as that. Exactly the kind of jobs we all know New Zealand needs to get more of. We could do it here.
Develop the IT skills you need, and if you can figure out how to control an avatar, you can figure out how to control a robot.
Yeah, actually, and I suppose, look, quick segue, I suppose, to the SME panel and the e-health and the education sessions. There's a whole field called serious games, and which is how do you use the things that make games so addictive and engaging to people and young people and apply them to a serious outcome. And there's huge opportunities in that to actually get greater economic benefit out of ultra-fast broadband as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, before we close, I just want to say, look, I know there were questions that didn't get asked, and that's just a limitation of time, but I will remind you there is a Twitter feed, and if you put the question up there, you never know, one of the panellists might actually either answer it themselves or get someone from their organisation to answer it for them on the Twitter feed. So don't think that just because the formal panel's ended that the conversation's over. But at that point, well, I'd like you to join me in thanking this excellent panel on the consumer issues. But unfortunately,